Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar of Sustainable Conservation's Climate Resilience in Action Spring Webinar Series. Thank you all for joining us today. We're thrilled to have our amazing panelists here with us to share their experiences working to improve forest and ecosystem health and create a safer, more resilient California. Before we get started, I'd like to give many thanks to our webinar sponsors. You'll see on the screen, Spotswood Estate Vineyard and Winery, Wilson Cincini Foundation, and Jennifer Hernandez of Holland and Knight for supporting our spring webinar series and sharing sustainable conservation's vision of stewarding our state's most precious natural resources for all Californians. I'm Stephanie Falzone, Senior Project Manager on Sustainable Conservation's Accelerating Restoration team. For those of you who don't know us, sustainable conservation advances the collaborative stewardship of California's land, air, and water for the benefit of nature and people. Every day, we bring together business, landowners, scientists, government agencies, nonprofits, and others to advance collaborative solutions to steward the natural resources we all depend on in ways that are just and make economic sense. Our Accelerating Restoration team has been working with agencies and other partners to create efficient permitting pathways to help get more restoration done across the state. Many of those projects focus on improving places like rivers, floodplains, and wetlands, including the Sierra Meadow behind me. But the fact of the matter is that our habitats are connected, and the health of our forests affects the health of our waterways. The connection between forest health, wildfire, and our aquatic ecosystems is one of the topics we will explore in this webinar. In our previous webinar in this series with Dr. Daniel Swain, he talked about the need for more prescribed burning and how we manage vegetation at scale in California. In this webinar, we'll pick up on some of that discussion and hear from three people who are taking action to improve forest health and make communities safer from wildfire. Now, before we introduce you to our panelists, we'd like to get to know our audience a bit better. So we have three questions for you. Hannah's going to start a poll. So scroll down if you don't see them all. And if you don't see your answer reflected, feel free to put your answers in the chat. So our first question is, where are you joining us from today? The second question is, what best describes your affiliation? And the third one is how you would rate your level of knowledge on wildfire resilience efforts in California. So I'm seeing a lot of Bay Area folks, some Sacramento Valley. Still got some responses coming in. Oh, Canada, thank you. Let's see, it looks like we've got, most people have responded, so I'll end the poll and we can show our results. So yeah, lots of folks in the Bay Area, but people from all over, including out of state, a lot of government, agency, and nonprofit, and oh, Ireland. Thank you to our international webinar audience. And level of knowledge, we've got a lot of beginner and average. So I think you'll learn a lot from our panelists today. So I'll be starting a discussion with our panelists soon, and we'll save some time at the end for audience questions, but you don't need to wait until that time to ask your question. Please go ahead at any time and enter questions in the Q&A box that come to mind as we're talking. And now I'm excited to introduce our three panelists. So you can all come on screen. First, we have Julie Howard, Forest Health and Program Manager at the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, also known as CAL FIRE, where she leads the Forest Health Program. Over the past 6 years, she's worked to expand and strengthen the program, focusing on improving forest resilience, supporting restoration projects, and addressing climate challenges such as wildfire and drought. And we also have Margo Robbins, co-founder and executive director of the Cultural Fire Management Council, co-lead of the Indigenous Peoples Burn Network, and board member for the Indigenous Stewardship Network. Margo comes from the traditional Yurok village of Morak and is an enrolled member of the Yurok tribe. And our third panelist is Connor Gilmartin, assistant director of the Butte Fire Safe Council, where he secures grant funding to implement cross-boundary fuels reduction projects, oversees hazardous fuels removal operations, and manages the implementation of the council's CAL FIRE, California Climate Investments Forest Health Grants. Thank you all for being with us today. And I'll start by having each of you tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing. So we'll start off with Julie. If you could just provide some background on, how our forests got to be in the condition they are, and about CAL FIRE and what you all do.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you for having me, and welcome everybody. My name is Julie Howard. I'm the Forest Health Program Manager at CAL FIRE, also known as the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. I've been with the program for about 6 years and worked for CAL FIRE going on 10, I think over 10 years now. So again, thanks for having me. And just to answer your question, kind of to help explain how our forests got to the condition that they are today. As many of you know, California's forests have evolved with a regular and natural fire regime, so that they've adopted to periodic fires to help clear dead vegetation, promote new growth, and maintain biodiversity. Native American tribes helped with that natural regime by doing cultural burning, over thousands of years. Kind of the big change is when European settlers came in the 1800s, and forest management changed dramatically. So most notably was fire suppression, and then there was intensified logging, which really made differences on the landscape. So with the biggest thing here is the fire suppression. So we're going on over 100 years of fire suppression. So as soon as the fire starts, we're going to put it out. A lot of that was about protecting natural resources and timber and agricultural fields, which, learning now from past management practices may have not been the best way to actually protect those resources. So like I said, going on over 100 years of fire suppression, we've just built up this incredible amount of fuel. And so when fires are sparked or ignited, that they burn much more intense, and that intensity will actually create mortality, rather than if we had a natural fire regime, things would be burning at a much lower intensity. Mortality would be much lower. It would just kind of do that, removing the fuels, creating, an open forest that's healthy and is actually adapted to fire. So that's probably the largest, what's created the most impactful change over the last 100+ years. Along with having high fuel loads, it's kind of created stress on these forests, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, like the mortality with trees due to insects and pests and disease. And again, if we had those natural fire regimes, it would be clearing that out and actually creating a healthier forest. So, between that fuel loading and then, what's compounding this problem is climate change. And so we're experiencing, hotter and drier conditions, which is leading to more frequent and intense wildfires. So these and then having droughts, that also stresses these trees out, which makes them more susceptible to disease and pests like the bark beetle, what I was talking about. So I think that kind of covers like where we are today, how we've gotten where we are today. And then I know Stephanie asked me to talk a little bit more about CAL FIRE. What is CAL FIRE? What do we do? So again, the California Department of Forestry and Fire, also known as CAL FIRE, we're a state agency. We're responsible for fire protection and emergency response across California. We provide wildfire prevention, suppression, emergency services in urban, rural areas. Our department covers over 31 million acres of state responsibility acres. So we are a large organization statewide. So what we're best known for is our suppression role, firefighting. But we're also involved in forest management, reforestation, prescribed burning. We're working to reduce wildfire risk and improve forest health. So there's this whole I don't want to say other side, but there's the fire suppression side, and then we have this resource management side, and we all work collaboratively together. So CAL FIRE also collaborates with local fire departments, federal agencies, other organizations for this coordinated effort in firefighting, disaster response. We oversee emergency medical services, law enforcement, disaster response, including management of hazardous materials and search and rescue. So we are an all-encompassing department. We have many different facets. So it's I learn something new about the department every year, we're just a very large department. So yeah, so some of these things that we do to mitigate these growing risks of wildfires is, like I said, we have forest restoration, public education. We're providing information to communities about fire safety, defensible space, building codes, all designed to reduce fire hazards. And in more recent years, we've worked with indigenous tribes to incorporate traditional ecological knowledge like cultural burning into our fire management strategies. So with climate change exacerbating these fire risks, CAL FIRE plays a critical role in responding to and managing these fires, and also working on long-term solutions to make our landscapes more resilient. And so that's what I am really focused in my job, is with the Forest Health Program. We give grants. It's all about creating forest resiliency and, the goal of keeping as many trees as we have right now on the landscape for 100 years from now. So that's a big goal of mine. And I think I'll stop there because I know we have a lot of
Yeah.
questions and things to talk about. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I mean, I think that leads really well. You talked about cultural fire. So yeah, we'll go next to Margo. And if you could start by telling us what the Cultural Fire Management Council is and what it does.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Now Margo Robbins. The Cultural Fire Management Council came into being in 2013 to restore fire back to the landscape. So we are a community-based, native-led nonprofit in far northern California, and our goal is to restore our ancestral territory to a state of health with fully functioning ecosystems, resources to support our cultural lifeways, and increasing its fire resiliency. So we have been burning since 2012 was our very first burn in cooperation with CAL FIRE. And we have several different types of burning that we do. We have prescribed fire with cultural objectives. And so those that type of burning is done with NWCG, the federally qualified personnel, but with fire engines, hose lays, everybody wearing their Nomax, operating with the burn plan. And the part that makes it cultural is that we are choosing places to burn that are rich in cultural resources. A midway strategy that we are using to increase the knowledge base of cultural and prescribed burning is to have what we call aspiring firelighters workshops. They're like a 2-day workshop for people who have never burned before. So those might be other tribes, NGOs, private landowners. And so basically we are teaching them how to burn in today's changed landscape with the overabundance of vegetation. And of course, depending on what kind of vegetation you are burning in, you will use a little bit different strategies. So in that workshop, we are teaching them, how to do hose lays, how to set up the portable tanks, use radios, all of those kinds of things that we use in the new fire world. And then the third fire strategy we are doing is more aligned with traditional burn practices, and that is the family burn program, which we support during the times when CAL FIRE does not have fire restrictions. So we will help families that are interested in burning around their homes for wildfire protection or for cultural resources by lending them tools. If they need help, we'll send some of our work crew to go help them put in safety features for their burn to happen. And then on the day that they choose to burn, they can request that we bring our fire engine so that they have a mobile source of water on site. Sometimes they request that, sometimes they don't, depending on, the how wet or dry the fuel moistures are, how comfortable they feel with their burn skills. We also have a 1 day safe burn practices in today's changed landscape that we offer to the community. We recently completed a long-term burn, which I don't want to call it a burn plan. We call it a cultural fire stewardship plan, and that is how to prioritize areas to burn within ancestral territory. We have broken up the landscape into watersheds, and so it looks similar to what other people would call pods. And within those different watersheds, we have prioritized the areas according to values identified by the community, the tribe, and CFMC. Those values include prairie restoration, oak woodlands, which are both black oak and tan oak. Black oak has some of the most diverse plant communities anywhere. In one area, our botanist counted 56 different native plants. And in the tan oaks, of course, provide a food source for us. Another value is fire-dependent basket materials and elder protection. So along with those values, we have established return intervals, optimal return intervals. So for example, if we're burning hazel for our baskets, we would return back to the same place every 3 to 5 years and reburn it. If it's an elder protection, we'd want to do it every year or every other year to keep the brush down away from those places. So basically, we are managing the forest for living culture and wildfire resilience. We have our values and priorities set out for us, so we're not just burning helter-skelter here and there. The priorities are also connected to accessibility and because we need to be able to get in there and get our fire engines in there. And like I say, what kind of resources are on the land. We have received a forest health grant from the CAL FIRE, which is just so critical to furthering the goals of the Cultural Fire Management Council. So we're really excited to be implementing that. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Margo. And I encourage anyone after this, go to their website and explore the whole story map about the Cultural Fire Stewardship Plan. It's really interesting to look at, and especially if you love maps. But yeah, definitely explore their resources. So we'll go next to Connor. If you could, start by telling us about the Butte Fire Safe Council and the work that you all are doing.
Certainly. Hello, folks. I'm going to share a screen here. I have some slides prepared for us to look at. First, I'll begin by introducing the Fire Safe Council. Can I confirm that everyone can see the PowerPoint slide here?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So the Butte County Fire Safe Council is a 501c3. We were formed in 1998. We're a parent organization to 7 active fire safe councils. And we are a heavy supporter and proponent of advocating for Firewise USA communities. And we primarily focus on doing cross-boundary fuels reduction projects across Butte County. We have a 17-member board of directors. We oftentimes get confused with being a part of the county, but we are a 501c3. And we're primarily funded through state and federal grants that we use to leverage those dollars to do the fuels reduction work and community outreach and education work that we're known for. I'll take a moment to just read this. This is a synthesis that I put together of our sort of mission, vision, values, and what staff have identified as our noble cause. The Butte County Fire Safe Council is pioneering cross-boundary fuels reduction projects to protect lives, preserve forests, and cultivate shared responsibility that results in long-term ecological and community resilience. We're guided by a noble cause to empower individuals and adopt conscious wildland management, and we're helping shift the paradigm from reactive to proactive hazardous fuels reduction, approaching wildfire mitigation, community education, and evacuation preparedness at a landscape scale. We're all about community resilience. I oftentimes dub it the 3 Rs: resilience, restoration, and recovery. But a lot of our work is rooted in that preventative fuels treatment to hopefully mitigate any impacts from catastrophic wildfires that we see. This is a map of Butte County for those that aren't familiar. We're sort of from a 30,000-foot view divided by 7 ridges. So we've kind of operated in these 7 planning areas that you see here. A very large portion of Butte County is designated as wildland urban interface, which is unique. And something very unique about Butte County is in the last 6 years alone, we've seen over half of Butte County burn. Over 58% or over 50% of Butte County is wildland urban interface, and just within the last 6 years, from November 2018 to present, we've seen almost 400,000 acres burn, beginning in November of 2018 with the Camp Fire, and most recently last year with the Park Fire, burning almost 55,000 acres here in Butte County. There are many more fires that are not listed in this table here, but it really highlights the unique vulnerability that Butte County faces in terms of its expanding wildland urban interface, and unfortunately, how severely affected in the last decade Butte County has been to the effects of wildfire. People are intimately familiar with wildfire here. Julie mentioned state-regulated lands. A large portion of Butte County, over half of it, is designated as state responsibility area, which is also something unique. And the Office of the State Fire Marshal has designated almost 400,000 acres of that SRA to have very high wildfire potential. At the federal level, the USDA has a tool that measures vulnerability to communities as well, and 33 of our rural communities that exist in Butte County are designated as being 99% more likely than any other community in the US to be affected by wildfire. So I wanted to provide some context to how familiar Butte County's amazingly resilient communities are, especially those that live in the rural communities, and how oftentimes people have endured multiple wildfires. It is not common to meet people in Butte County that have endured being evacuated many times and are unfortunately very intimately familiar with this landscape. So the Butte County Fire Safe Council has 26 active grants, 3 of which right now are CAL FIRE Forest Health grants, which we are very grateful for. They allow us to do amazing work across the county. We recently just closed out a forest health grant that we started in 2021, and now we're working on 3 other ones that allow us to do large-scale cross-boundary fuels reduction projects, and those are funded through the California Climate Investments Program, which is an extension and funds the CAL FIRE Grants program. So we work very closely with our partners at the Butte unit and other partners at the state scale at CAL FIRE. We have a very close working relationship with them and are extremely grateful for the Forest Health program. On the right-hand side here, you see one of our program managers and one of our on-staff registered professional foresters up in Magalia on one of our projects where we were doing some mastication on some private lands. In 2024, we treated over 3,000 acres, which we're proud of, and we are scaling up every single year, which is something that we're really excited about, and it is necessary to increase the pace and scale at which we're doing these fuels reduction projects. And it's becoming a lived reality here. And it's something that we're proud to highlight. So beginning to speak to what we were talking about here, I have a question that prompts me to speak about prescribed fire and our role in preparing landscapes for prescribed fire. A lot of the fuels reduction work that we do, whether or not that be through hand cutting and chipping, hand cutting and piling, biomass removal, mastication projects. It's really aimed to prepare the landscape and reduce those fuel loads so that we can start to see those natural fire return intervals and that natural fire regime that Julie was talking about earlier and that Margo touched on as well in terms of cultural management of the landscape and indigenous stewardship. A large portion of the work that we do is rooted in education and outreach. If we don't have public buy-in, that paradigm shift won't happen. And so we are in no ways operating within a vacuum. A lot of what the Fire Safe Council does is rooted in community outreach and trying to provide people context to why ultimately fire should be a celebrated thing that comes through the landscape. And unfortunately, due to the paradigm of fire suppression and a lack of fire partnership over the last 100+ years, we've seen those densely overstocked forests develop. And we're trying to help shift those forests to be healthier, less densely stocked, so that we can work with our tribal partners in the county to hopefully manage the landscapes through less intense interventions and start to see these landscapes get managed through low intensity prescribed fire, which is really exciting. And Butte County has a lot of prescribed fire education that's going on in it. We work closely with the Butte County Prescribed Burn Association, which is an extension of the Butte County Resource Conservation District, and they're a volunteer-based organization that allow people the opportunity to learn about prescribed fire, and they do small-scale community burns across the county on private lands where they go out and prep a little 1 to 4 acre unit and then empower the community to learn about what it takes to operate a prescribed fire operation safely. So we work to try and help get funding for the Prescribed Burn Association, as well as do projects to prepare landscapes for them to go out and do those community-driven projects. This is a photo of a pile burn that happened late January earlier this year. This was funded through one of our CCI Forest Health grants called Forest Health Upper Watershed. This is in Magalia, California, which is just above Paradise. There's a lot of dense forest out in Upper Magalia, and this project and the grant funds that we had through the CAL FIRE Forest Health Program allowed us to do over 200 acres of pile burning, which was amazing. And this is in areas that are very close to communities, and the public buy-in and support that we've gotten has just been genuinely extremely impressive. And these projects genuinely do create a much safer buffer around these densely populated rural communities. I was very happy with how these pile burns went, and we actually got to take some people from the grants management team at CAL FIRE up recently to show them these projects, and it was great to get boots on the ground and actually see these units in person. This is a photo of a Prescribed Burn Association burn. We are not present in actually performing the prescribed fire operations here, but we went out to help highlight the project and share it out on our social media channels so that people were aware of why they might be seeing smoke in the air. Beautiful spring burn. So ultimately, this is something that Julie touched on as well, but ultimately the treatments that we're doing are focused on trying to restore the landscape so that we can have more essentially just less intense interventions and allow for the opportunity for cultural fire practitioners to manage their ancestral territories. By reducing fuel loads, we have less intense wildfires, less carbon released, and a greater survival rate of those mature trees that sequester carbon. Strategic restoration helped forests better withstand drought, pests, and that climate stress that was touched on as well. We have close partnerships with 5 tribes in Butte County. We work with them for prescribed fire prep. We also work with them, helping hire them and contract them out to do the fuels reduction work to try and build that workforce capacity up, and also lean on them for recommendations in terms of the treatment to integrate traditional ecological knowledge into the more modern management practices that are recognized in the world of forestry. This is something that I came up with some staff, but ultimately we see our work as being a diverse yet interrelated set of projects and partnerships that are rooted in a sincere passion for responsible stewardship of the ridges, canyons, forests, and valley that we call home. And this is a wonderful photo on the right-hand side here of the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve, which is the largest ecological reserve in the California State University system, that we're proud to say calls itself home here in Butte County. I think for right now, unless there's anything else that you'd like me to touch on, I can wait and share some of these slides maybe later when we get to another question.
Thanks, Connor. Yeah,
Certainly.
you're very busy. You got a lot going, you're doing a lot of great work.
We do certainly have a lot going on.
You have a lot going on. Let's go back to, I mean, yeah, you talked a lot about collaboration, and yeah, it's great to hear all the different organizations you're working with. We'll go back to Julie and just touch on, you know, how CAL FIRE, you heard about the grants, the CAL FIRE, you know, that both Butte Fire Safe Council and the Cultural Fire, you know, you've got. So yeah, if you want to, Julie, talk more about how CAL FIRE is supporting the work that Margo and Connor and all kinds of other people are doing around the state to build resilience to wildfire.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go into that. I'll talk from my job specifically, and then kind of broader CAL FIRE, how they're also supporting this, you know, supporting the work. I'm gonna brief up a little bit of what I was talking, because I think we're running tight on time. But so a lot of what Connor and Margo were talking about was grants. So I'm a grant program. There's multiple grant programs within CAL FIRE, but that is one way that we're supporting this work on the ground, is providing the funding. I mean, that's pretty clear. I think we all understand that. There's also, you know, CAL FIRE is the lead state agency when you think of fire. So CAL FIRE provides technical experts in wildfire prevention and forest management. So we're always a resource to reach out to and talk with, and, you know, help. You know, I think of CAL FIRE as as a project partner on some of these projects, especially things that we're funding. I don't think of us as just the funders. You know, my staff is a bunch of registered professional foresters, so they actually have expertise in forest management. We're trying to work together with you, with the grantees, with other folks, building projects, funding projects, seeing them be successful. You know, other things are training and certifications. CAL FIRE has a ton of training. I'm not going to go into it. That could be another half an hour presentation. And then response coordination. So talking about prescribed fire, you know, CAL FIRE is there as a resource to be there to help with prescribed burning, especially in the event that it goes out of the control lines. So that's, I think, kind of in a nutshell of how CAL FIRE is supporting those projects. I'll stop there just because I know we have a lot of questions. So
Yeah, I know I've got some other ones I want to get to. Let's see. Yeah, thank you, Julie. Margo, if you could talk more, get a little more specific about this is how I, you know, first really dug into all the work you were doing with this Skywalk Keyway Match It Needs Fire Phase 1 project, and kind of the goals and benefits of this project. And if we could also tie in, you know, how this forest health work benefits the, you know, the aquatic ecosystems, the, you know, the waterways and all the creatures that live in and around them, and kind of connect those things too.
Yes, so the Skywalk Keep Wamech project, funded under the Forest Health Project, we started implementing it in October, and it is a continuation of our goal to restore the land. So as I mentioned earlier, our areas are broken out into watersheds. We have the Klamath River running right through the middle of our reservation. And so we are working on the hillsides, especially the south facing side, to restore that area to help. There are a lot of invasive species that are trying to take over culturally important gathering places. Species such as French broom and Scotch broom and Himalaya blackberries. The Himalaya blackberries are particularly harmful to the waterways. They are just really crowding into those creek areas. And unfortunately, you can't get rid of them with fire, really. They like fire. And so we are employing additional means in addition to fire to get rid of them. We are, our crews are using weed eaters to cut the French broom before they flower and spread more seeds. The seed bank is in the soil for like up to 50 years. So in addition to not letting them produce any more seeds, when we burn, it's expending the seed bed. And then we're also like wrenching them up by the roots, and it's a very arduous time consuming task, but you know, it has to be done. And so it's really nice to have resources to be able to balance that, restore, and then plus I can't think of the word, reduce the hazards affecting. Another thing that we are doing, so those treatments are pretty much post-burn. Pre-burn, we are doing, depending on the time of year, we don't have to do it so much in spring, but in our fall burns, we have to really be careful to protect the trees so that they're not getting too much heat, especially those heritage oaks. And so we'll pull away the flammable material from the base of them, and then we have specific firing patterns that we use so that the base of the trees are not getting too much heat and sending it up, also affecting the upper limbs. We primarily do broadcast burns, so we are putting in fire lines, doing these pre-treatments, and then as a post-treatment, we are cutting the standing dead and piling that and burning it. So we have kind of switched. We're doing it kind of the opposite of what most people do. We do have really, really dense brush in our landscape, but our approach is to first reduce that brush with the broadcast burn and then take out more post-burn using piles. So as we all know, fire affects pretty much all aspects of life. It increases the water flow by reducing the amount of vegetation pulling from the water source. It also purifies the water because of the charcoal left on a landscape level. The rainwater is filtered through that charcoal, reaching the creeks. The ash left after the fire is fertilizing the soil. The native plants have less competition for sunlight and water, and so they are just really, you know, really thriving post-burn. And it helps the air quality by avoided wildfire emissions. So of course, cultural and prescribed fire reduce the risk of wildfire, which therefore is avoiding emissions. So we are really looking at fire as a holistic approach to taking care of the land, the plants, the animals, and the people. In all of the burns that we've done, we see deer coming back there. Deer were starting to be pretty much almost totally absent before we started burning. Now we see deer all the time because they'll like come into those areas. Like as soon as the ash is cool enough, they'll come in and roll in that ash to get rid of their ticks and fleas. And then come spring, they're coming into those burned areas that have all this really nutritious new growth to have their babies and raise those babies in those areas. And so, like I said, it is a holistic way of approaching fire use on the land.
Thank you for that. And kind of related to that, if you or any of our other panelists want to talk about kind of, well, I know we want to talk about smoke and kind of, smoke and other things related to the difference between, these prescribed burns and cultural burns versus catastrophic wildfire, and how these things are different. So yeah, if Margo or Connor or Julie, any of you want to talk about that.
I could give a quick little difference between prescribed burns and cultural burns. Cultural burns are done, implemented by the people from that area, the native people from that area, using place-based knowledge. And so they know the lay of the land. They know where the wet places are, the creeks are, how the wind blows, the change in the wind patterns, what kind of vegetation is there, and when it needs to be burned. So the timing of the burns is critical for cultural burns. As I said earlier, there are prescribed burns with cultural objectives, and then there are straight up cultural burns, but it always involves the people from that area. Sometimes they may use a burn plan, sometimes they may not.
Thank you. And then, yeah, Connor, did you want to add something?
Ultimately, I think the only thing that I would add is certainly that, you know, doing these prescribed fires is without a doubt safer than doing nothing, and reducing those fuel loads and having the opportunity to put fire on the landscape when we do have that control over it is a much better option than waiting for wildfire, especially when we can partner with those people that have that extensive place-based knowledge that's been passed down for millennia. Um, and it's really remarkable watching some of these professionals in the prescribed fire landscape operate. They use the instant command system. They're very safe, planned operations. Everything that is put into that prescription and written into that burn plan allows for a very thorough and safe, impressive operation. It's something really, really interesting to watch. Something that's been happening in Butte County a lot lately are the prescribed fire training events, and it helps teach the members of the public about some of these things that we've discussed. And yeah, just to touch on and loop back around to what you were talking about in terms of prescribed fire and smoke, it's much better to have these fuels burn at a low intensity than to have wildfire be burning things that aren't ponderosa pines and sugar. Yeah, it's not ideal to have the what exists in homes burning in the air. And so we would much rather have those low intensity prescribed fires that are healthy and holistic than see the effects of wildfire. I think
Thanks,
that's all
Connor.
I'll add.
Yeah. I'm going to go to one of our audience questions, which kind of touched on something I wanted to ask about anyway. This was with so much forest in California under federal management, how are CAL FIRE and non-federal groups sharing lessons, needs, experiences with federal forest managers, and what opportunities and challenges are there working with the feds?
I can touch on that and others can join in. As from my program, the Forest Health Program perspective, is that our grants are eligible across all FRA, SRA, LRA. So that's talking about federal responsibility area, state responsibility area, across the whole state. So as we all know, fire sees no jurisdictional boundaries. So if somebody has a project and they want to go over different jurisdictions, that's actually kind of a gold star on an application, is we're looking for large scale, highly collaborative, multi-jurisdictional, multi-land ownership projects, because it doesn't, if you have one landowner that wants to do work and nobody else does work around them, it's not as effective as if you got everybody together. So that's one way that CAL FIRE is working on federal lands. Many of our grantees are nonprofits or resource conservation districts, or like these organizations. A lot of them have very strong partnerships with their federal partners. Some of them are even in master stewardship agreements. So they kind of create this long-term plan of what are the priorities, how can we work together. So I would say there's an impressive amount of collaboration, you know, considering that over half of the forested landscape in California is on federal lands. So that's kind of how we're working together. And, you know, what opportunities or challenges, I think, you know, the elephant in the room is what's going on the federal level, especially with the Forest Service. CAL FIRE is just operating as they always have. We're doing everything we can to support our federal partners. We're still encouraging all the work to be done on the land. We're not changing the way that we're operating or funding or anything with our federal partners. So seems as though things are changing daily. So we're just kind of trying to roll the punches and best support our federal partners as we can.
It's really, yeah. Connor, did you want to add something?
Yeah, certainly. Like Julie said, things have been changing almost daily ever since January. There's been a lot of uncertainties surrounding federal funding. Here at the Fire Safe Council, we've just been working on amending. We're extremely grateful to have state funding through the CCI prevention and forest health programs. And even in these times of uncertainty where we're seeing federal freezes affect these USDA and FEMA funded grants, we've just been pivoting dollars around and still adjusting every single day to make sure that the fuels reduction work and community protection work that we're focused on is still possible. But like Julie said, it's really only possible for us to see the work that needs to be done at the scale it needs to be done at, working on those cross-boundary projects. And something that we're really proud of and something that we work really hard to do is to do those multi-jurisdictional projects, because the land is a mosaic of ownership. And beyond just working on not only state, federal, and locally owned lands, really partnering with hundreds and thousands of landowners here in Butte County, and teaching them the benefits of managing their own landscape so that eventually we shift the paradigm for them not needing that third-party intervention, but they're empowered to manage the landscape and take care of their own backyard. Something that one of our board members says is that when you become a landowner, you become a land manager. You don't just own that land. There's definitely a responsibility of stewarding it. And that's something that we're trying to help with quite a bit, as well as providing people those educational opportunities, whether that be through grazing cooperatives, or just teaching people how to do that defensible space clearance, or empowering people to do their own small, safe pile burns. That collaborative planning is really how we're going to see community resilience at the scale we need to see it.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, we've got some more questions coming in. I'm trying to figure out where to focus ourselves. Let's see. We've got, Connor, you can look at these two. We've got one about the proper or desirable amount of wildfire in Butte County in acres per year. I don't know if that's something you all kind of have a target for. And then we've also got a question about how these mitigation efforts impact, the insurance and insurability of those wildland urban interface communities. So I'll let you pick what you want to talk about.
Sure. First, Julie,
then-
please.
I just
Julie.
wanted to say a quick answer to Max's question about the insurance. There was a great conversation that was just had at the last Wildfire and Forest Resiliency Task Force. I'm going to throw in the chat the link to the webinar. I believe that it's the agenda item. I think it was, I can't remember exactly which one it was. It might have been lessons learned from LA Fire. Anyways, I'll figure out, oh no, it's the tools for improving community resilience. So I'll put this link in there if you want to watch that. There's a great conversation about that. That's a whole
Yeah, that's a
You're
good
opening
bit.
up a big pot there by asking that question, but I would highly recommend that you watch that. So I'll throw that in the chat. And Connor, go ahead. I just wanted to
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
touch on that insurance question.
Yeah, I watched that too. It was really good.
Sure. So yeah, just speaking to insurance, it's a complex and very nuanced landscape, but one of the primary things that the Fire Safe Council does to help promote opportunities for people to hopefully get reductions on their home insurance is promote a nationally recognized program called FireWise USA, where community members can band together and get a group of properties together to certify themselves as a FireWise USA community, which essentially means that they are committed to adopting fire safe practices, clearing defensible space around their home, and eventually just creating a unit that is much more fire safe than if they didn't do that work. And there has been proof that has resulted in reductions in fire insurance. It's variable, and I'm not qualified to speak to the nuances of that, but we're proud to say that we have 30 plus in good standing FireWise USA communities in Butte County, which is quite a bit. And people have had success with reducing the cost of their fire insurance through these decentralized community efforts. And then just speaking to the, I guess, amount of fire that we'd ideally see in the landscape, each watershed, each microclimate, each ridge, each county has a unique relationship to its fire, how fire adapted it is and what that ideal fire return interval looks like. We live the balance is out of whack without a doubt right now. And so we live in a landscape where ultimately wildfire, when it comes through a landscape, does have unprecedented intensity. So right now, we really want to see interventions done at that cross boundary interagency level so that when fire does come through the landscape, it is low intensity. It doesn't get up into the canopy of the trees and it doesn't start spotting out and having irregular fire behavior. And it actually just creeps along the forest floor and provides the ecological holistic benefits to the landscape that it typically would if we had less overstocked and intensely dense fuel loads. This is a map that you see on the screen of Butte County's fire history. It's pretty remarkable how much wildfire there's been, but you can see right in the middle there, that gap, and that is the community of Forest Ranch, and it's something that we're very focused on working on fuels reduction there. It hasn't seen wildfire in over 100 years, and it's something that we're very focused on trying to invest dollars in those communities to prepare them. Because unfortunately, it is inevitable that eventually wildfire will come to that landscape, and we're doing everything that we can to put projects on the ground so that when that does come, our incident responders can respond to it effectively, and people can experience it as safely as possible.
Thanks, Connor. So we only have a few minutes left. And I think in those few minutes, if anyone has, if you all have places kind of where people want to stay, more up to date on this topic, feel free to put something in the chat or quickly mention something, but just kind of to close it out, what's something that, gives you hope and inspires you to keep going and keep doing this work. Maybe we'll start with Julie.
Yeah, I would say, the the thing that probably gives me the most hope in my job and knowing what I'm doing is making a difference is when we get those phone calls from our grantees who are being affected by a wildfire and saying, hey, just wanted to let you know that treatment we did last year, 3 years ago, actually stopped the progression of this wildfire and maybe protected this community. The most recent was in the park fire protecting the town of Cohasset. So, there's success stories is really to sum it up as success stories of these treatments. And just another layer of that is when we fund a project and then to see multiple phases or other people being brought in with that collaboration to continue building onto these projects, that's where we're really making a big difference is these large landscape scale multi-collaborative, multi-jurisdictional, like I said, fire sees no boundaries, whether it's, landowner or jurisdiction or what it may be, it's going to follow the landscape. So I think an also great thing that's happening is just how much we are recognizing what cultural burning was extremely effective, and we're bringing it back, and there's new bills that are protecting these new forest management techniques, and bringing tribes to the table and having these conversations and trying to learn from them. So I think that is only going to keep happening, and we're very supportive of that. CAL FIRE has a new tribal wildfire resiliency grant program specifics to help bring up the capacity and the tribal ecological knowledge treatments that tribes are doing. So I'll stop there, but I think that's where my hope is coming from.
Thanks. Yeah, same question to Margo. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but yeah.
I totally agree with everything that Julie said, and that is definitely where my hope comes from too, that, people recognize the need for fire. There is money to support up in the pace and scale. There is legislation being put into place to accommodate that, and it is just an exciting time to be able to, step up and move this forward so that we are decreasing wildfire incidents and increase in forest health. And so it is a very exciting. Julie, I hope you guys are keeping track of all the times people call up and tell you that their work affected the wildfires movement, because that would be awesome information for us to start spreading around.
Yeah, thanks, Margo. Yeah, Connor, same question.
I think just directly related to what Margo and Julie touched on, in the park fire in July of last year here in Butte County, it dramatically affected the community of Cohasset. There was a success story that came out of it, although it is hard to say success story, but undoubtedly through CAL FIRE grant dollars, projects that we did in Butte County in combination with other organizations like the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, the Butte County Resource Conservation District, and individual landowners using NRCS equip grants, that combination of treatments and that multiplier effect that had, particularly on a property in in Cohasset called Maple Creek Ranch, when the park fire was coming up in the West Branch Mud Creek drainage, where it hit some of those units where those treatments were done through those grants, it dramatically changed the fire behavior, and it went from the canopy and dropped to the ground. And that private landowner was able to suppress that fire in combination with support from incident responders and CAL FIRE. And I will show one map here that we are proud to show. This has been dubbed the Green Island, and it's 717 acres of completely untouched, unburned land in the middle of what was an extremely intense wildfire. And we like to think that, through the combination of treatments and forward-thinking landowners taking responsibility and managing their landscape, and the mastication work that we did, the prescribed fire that was done, the biomass removal, the chipping that was done on some of these properties here on the east, we were able to see a real positive effect in reducing the intensity of that wildfire behavior. So it's proof that these projects are working, and we're really proud of those 717 acres.
Thanks, Connor. And I see Julie shared some CAL FIRE success stories in the chat. Yeah, so important to share, what's working well in those stories. So
Yeah,
thank you.
That's a new effort, so there should be a lot more coming. But yeah,
Oh, exciting. Okay, so everyone bookmark that. Keep checking back on it. Thank you, Julie, Margo, and Connor for joining us today and sharing your experiences. I learned a ton. I hope everyone else did. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. We'll be sending the recording soon in case you missed anything or would like to revisit the discussion. And along with the recording, we'll send along some links and resources in case you'd like to learn more or support the great work of our panelists. The next webinar in this series will focus on flood risk reduction, followed by a final one focused on drought resilience. So stay tuned to our emails or follow us on Eventbrite to hear when those webinar dates get announced. And if you'd like to follow or support Sustainable Conservation's work, you'll see more information on the screen here. So thank you all for tuning in, and many thanks to our great panelists.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.